in front of some of my favourite artefacts in this exhibition. This is our little sub-theme on lances and leeches, so medicine on board ships in the 1830s. We have a medical kit belonging to Dr. Everard, who was a surgeon on the Afrikaan, and it includes all sorts of gruesome things like saws and a trepan, which was used for drilling a hole in the head to relieve pressure, and lances for bleeding patients, which was a very common cure. We know quite a lot about Dr. Everard because Mary Thomas, who was a passenger on the Afrikaan, kept a lovely diary. And our first introduction to him is her talking about him neglecting her young son, who was suffering from scarlet fever. And she wasn't impressed with the surgeon. I think it was a bit unfair as far as Dr. Everard was concerned, because basically she was on board ship with a highly contagious disease, and if you'd interacted with that patient, it probably would have spread throughout the ship. So I think the jury's out on whether Everard was a good surgeon or not. We've got some beautiful objects on display in this exhibition, but some of the most interesting material really relates to conditions on board. We might not necessarily have an object to illustrate that. What we have here, however, is a water closet, or a replica water closet. And very few people can imagine the smell of a ship in the 1830s. Now, not everyone had access to a water closet. These are for women and children. They were regularly cleaned out by male passengers and crew. They were flushed out with water, but they could overflow, particularly when you're in a storm. There's not a lot you can do. The men, male crew and passengers, had to relieve themselves over the bow of the ship, hence we called it bow movements. And yeah, this was fine when you were in fairly rough water where the bow was constantly rinsed clean by waves, but when you were in the doldrums it was a fairly filthy prospect, and usually the crew member that wasn't working to full capacity was the one who was charged with cleaning the bow. So people who come to the exhibition will see cabins from various periods, one from the 1910s, one from the 1950s, and one from the 1830s. They're very precise replicas. You get a sense of what it was like being a passenger on board those vessels. We have some beautiful artefacts on display, particularly with the 1836 voyages. They illustrate various aspects of what it was like to be a passenger, a captain or a crew member on board. We have instruments that we use to plot a course. We have crafts that were created by crew members and the instruments they used to prepare sails. We have beautiful items connected with the motivations for leaving England and settling a new province. So it was about labour, it was about religious freedom. We have some beautiful artefacts that talk about the ship's voyage, what people ate, how they preserved food, how they looked after their health.